I'm Michael Shimada. I'm the Artistic Director at the Belfry Theatre, and with us tonight is Ivan Abel, our Executive Director at the Belfry, and two other Belfry Artistic Directors, both of whom began their careers as actors, both of whom are award-winning directors. He has had a long and acclaimed career directing at the Stratford Festival, along with most of the major theatres across Canada. She's had a long and acclaimed career directing at the Shaw Festival and most of the theatres and opera houses across the country, including numerous productions at Pacific Opera Victoria. And when she left the Belfry, she took over the helm of Vancouver's premier theatre, the Vancouver Playhouse. So please welcome our guests, Miles Potter and Glynis Leyshon.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
And I just want to say that the focus of tonight's conversation is surviving, I guess, really, how the theater can survive in tough times. And I just want to say that from the moment that COVID-19 hit in the middle of the Spark Festival in March. Is that your Douglas?
That was my husband that I just came out of the room. He's going, what am I missing? We are so not good at this. Sorry about that. Hello.
So as I was saying, from the moment that COVID-19 hit, our audiences have been remarkable, and the outpouring of love and affection and concern for the Belfry has been amazing. The tickets that we canceled to the shows that we had to the shows that we canceled, so many people turned them into donations, and everywhere I go on the street, people ask me when we're coming back. So, and we'll be talking about when we come back a little bit later. Ivan will be talking about that. But to start, Miles, so you were artistic director at the Belfry from 1984 to 1986.
Indeed.
And I also remember a conversation we had once when I think Theatre Pass Marais was looking for an artistic director, and I asked you why you weren't applying, and you said that you were never going to run a theater again as long as you lived.
And I never did.
Not yet. So I know when you arrived, you encountered a bit of a surprise. Do you want to talk to us about that?
Yeah, sure. Anytime if I say anything that you think might be libelous or something, just jump in and stop me. Yeah, it was kind of an informal thing when I don't think there was even applications. When they wanted a new artistic director at the Belfry, Patty Stewart reached out to me and asked me if I wanted the job. So then we talked and whatever, and he filled me in on the theater, and I was flown out to see a show and talk, and I thought about it, and then I said, yeah, it's looked very exciting, and I thought it'd be great to run that theater. And I had directed out there before for a previous artistic director. So I got in my red truck in Stratford, and I drove out and found a place to live and moved into the office across the square, great big office space across the square from the front of the Belfry, and got underway with the season, and you know, the usual meetings and things you had. And as we were beginning production and building our the new business manager came and said, it's odd, we can't seem to buy any lumber or tools or anything that we need until we pay people back. Do we know, do you know anything about this? I didn't. And so we started an investigation, and we literally found unpaid bills jammed into drawers in the offices. To try to shorten a fairly long story, the artistic director and his general manager had an interesting relationship, and apparently, as it was explained to me by other insiders, I didn't want to give him bad news, so that apparently he was not informed of the $500,000 deficit that they had run up.
$500,000. I
$500,000.
didn't realize it was that big. Wow.
Well, I believe, unless I've doubled it, it's either that it was $1 million budget for the theater and it was a $500,000 deficit, or a $500,000 budget and a $250,000 deficit. But I remember in our first crisis meeting, Patty Stewart saying, under no circumstances must the bank ever discover that our deficit is half the size of our operating budget. So these things were kept as under wraps as they could. And we had these emergency meetings and we realized that we were screwed and we basically had to shut down operations. We opened and ran the first show. I don't know if we got into a second show or not, but essentially we shut the theater down and did what, in a sense, what you're having to do now, which was explain to the patrons that this was happening and they could have their money back. God knows if they'd all asked for their money back, what would have happened. But in the case that you're experiencing now, majority of people said, no, we'll just either donate it or roll it over to when you guys reopen. So we basically shut down, restructured. Remember that big office I said that I arrived at and went across the street? And yeah, we had to get rid of all of that. We had to get rid of every extraneous thing that the theater had acquired over this time. I went back up into the Belfry with a desk and started running it from there. And for the remainder of that season, we worked with, I guess it was a crew of about 4 of us, I think. I did, we brought in I think I did a 2-hander. The main thing is that we struggled through the rest of that season, that first one. And
so did you actually end up canceling shows?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we only actually delivered, I think, one of the promised shows, maybe 2. And then after Christmas, I believe that was when we did, what's the David French 2-hander, Newfoundland?
Saltwater Moon? Saltwater Moon.
Yeah. We did a production of Saltwater Moon. But what I did then was, I started looking, as one must, for small shows and what we could possibly do for the next season. And I also stopped taking a salary, and with the proviso that I would work elsewhere. So I didn't take any money from the theater, but I did go away to direct and tried to put together the season. And so the first show that we did in the new season was the play which we called the Victoria Show, which featured Glynis Leyshon, because it had always been my experience in the business that local draws and people are interested in their own history and their own communities. So we did a collective creation. And I think we did pretty well. And Glynis could probably speak to that experience if she remembers anything much
Totally
about
remember it. Yeah.
Who else was in it, Glynis?
It was a whole local company. What I really remember, to be honest with you, I don't remember all of the actors in it, to my embarrassment and shame. But what Miles is being modest about, his work with Paz Marai, he did the seminal collective creation work, the farm show. And so he brought a wealth of experience to us to to find ways to go out into the community of Victoria and interview people and bring back stories, and then see if we could create and merge those stories into a theatrical experience. But there was nowhere to rehearse because we couldn't rehearse in the Belfry itself. And we were rehearsing at the Fernwood Community Center just down the way. And we had one of those blizzards just when we were getting ourselves together and feeling like, oh yeah, we could do this. We can make a play happen. And then there was a blizzard. And I remember, because Victoria didn't expect to have snow, I guess, there was snow blowing in, and I'm not exaggerating, blowing into the rehearsal hall. And we were all shivering around blankets. And then we were discussing whether this should be part of the play or not. And we decided maybe it shouldn't be. We'll try and make it other experiences. But my real pinnacle as an actor was I got to play the Parliament buildings, and I got to have a domed head with. So I feel that I peaked with your production, Miles.
You also had the lights, if you remember.
I did. They went on.
You had the lights that lit up at the end.
Some days I liked them on. Some days I liked them off. It was great.
You always got around when you entered as the Parliament buildings.
Yeah, it was fun. And we did Paul's Motor Inn with a copper top. And we did the Empress Hotel had Wellingtons on because of the leaky basement, the history of the leaky basement. And so it was all sort of iconic Victoria. There was some wonderful, wonderful stories about watching salmon die at Goldstream. Remember that? That was quite a long section. I was a dance teacher that was waiting to make it. In one of the interviews, one of the characters I played, they were quite magical times, actually.
Yeah, I have fond memories of that.
Yeah.
But so while I was trying to put this save a season together, there was a show that was going on over in Vancouver called Sex Tips for Modern Girls, and it had been a big hit, and people were flocking to see it, mostly because of the title. And I did go over to see it. I'm pretty damn sure it was okay, and I tried to negotiate with them because it was a hot title and it was local, and I wanted them to come, but a lot of other people wanted them to come, and they were very demanding about what they wanted from us, and we weren't in a position to give very much. So I had to pull the trigger on yes or no whether I was going to take this show. And on one of my trips to Toronto to direct a play, I had gone over to the Tarragon to the second space to see a little play upstairs with Rod Beatty. And there was a half a house in the upstairs, a small space. That was me, and it was his first run. And I saw Rod after the show. I said, Rod, that was a fantastic show. He said, yeah, thanks. It's going okay. But so what are you doing after this? He said, I don't have anything. I said, oh, well, listen, stay in touch. And then when I got back to Victoria, I checked in with the Sex Tips people, and they wanted all the red jelly beans taken out of the, whatever the demand was. And I finally said, oh, screw it. And I picked up the phone and I called Rod and I said, Rod, I know this is short notice. I know, I'm sorry about that. Is there any chance you could bring Wingfield Farm to Victoria? And he went, yeah, I got nothing on. I said, okay, what do you need? He said, well, I need I think it was a barn door and a bucket or something like that.
It's that half a fence. It's the half a fence and a barn door.
A fence and a barn door. So it was like, it was really short notice. And he arrived, and we got him a stage manager. And I guess we did a preview. My main memory is that we opened that show, and 24 to 48 hours later, there were lineups outside snaking down from our box office there in the old building, down the steps out into the square. And I remember looking at that and going, And that was, that was the first tour of Wingfield Farm. And Rod was great. He brought most of the subsequent first-time productions of Wingfield to the Belfry, because I was lucky enough to catch him upstairs at the Tarragon.
A couple of years ago, somebody asked me if I would write a nomination letter for Rod for the Order of Canada, and it was after we had done the gala and you had told that story, and I realized as I was writing it, like he must have saved so many theaters across this country. I know when I arrived at TNB, it was the show, we hadn't done them, so we did the first three in my first 3 seasons at TNB, and it balanced the budget every year. It was amazing.
Yeah, it must be like a theatrical thing now where, general manager comes to you and goes, we're in trouble. And you go, get me Rod Beatty. And then there was I needed another small show. And it was Patty Stewart who somehow with his connection anyway, he suggested this play called The Go-Go Boys, which was a 2-hander. No set, no anything, 2 English lads. And I think they had maybe done it in Vancouver. In any case, he said it was fantastic. I didn't have a third show. So I literally phoned up these guys and said, do you want to come here and do the show? Just like I did with Rod. I just took a chance. And they arrived the day before we were going to open it. And they went in, they did a dress, and I didn't go. And one of the people in the theater, there's only a few of us, I don't know who it was, but they said, so you're not even going to go watch the rehearsal or the preview? I said, no, there's nothing what am I going to do? I'm just going to go to opening night and let's see what happens. And I think that was I don't know if it drew as well as Rod's show, but it too turned into a sellout. We sold every seat. And then the final show of my last season, we did Educating Rita, because Shauna McKenna was in town doing a show at the other theater.
Oh.
So I didn't have to pay to fly her in.
Yeah.
And I played Frank because I was the only actor I could afford. And we got Glynis to direct it.
Because I was the actor you could afford.
And I don't know whether we've talked about that, but of course by the time we got to that point, I'd already talked to Patty about what should happen with the theater and who should take it over, because I was leaving. I arrived a young man and I left a middle-aged man. But I believe Educating Rita was quite successful. I was on the stage, so but I think we sold a lot of tickets. That's when I really learned what it was like to act on stage with Shauna McKenna, because she was also rehearsing another play at the same time, right? She just finished the closing of one when we got ready to open Rita, and I was doing my best to, learn my lines and learning to play my part. And I hadn't acted with her on stage before. So we had lovely rehearsals and we got ready to do our first preview. And the show begins with Frank on the telephone doing some exposition on the phone. He hangs up, there's a knock on the door. The door opens and Rita comes in. And I'm not kidding you. When there was an audience, the knock on the door, McKenna blew in, and I literally I grabbed the desk in order to keep up. I had not met acting energy like that before. And I hadn't known at that point what happens when she meets an audience. It's not like she suddenly brings something that, it's just what happens with a great actor. It's just this energy just comes out. And it was all I could do to stay with her. And I think it was probably a pretty amazing performance.
Well, you both were.
I kept up. Oh, my other.
And the two of you were memorialized in the lobby of the Belfry. There's a beautiful photograph of the two of you from that.
And it's one of our favorite family stories, is because the other thing about McKenna is that she does fantastic accents, right? You know, Michael, you've done an Australian play with her. She's done South African. Her ability to inhabit an accent is incredible. I'm not quite the same. I do my best, but I think Patty Stewart said that my accent in educating Rita roamed from the north of England to the south of France. However, whoever the woman who wrote paper, is it Audrey something? Was that?
Who wrote
There
what?
was a person who used to write criticism for a woman who wrote the review.
Audrey Johnson.
Audrey Johnson?
Yeah.
I've forgotten her name. Anyway, she liked me. And she wrote, I think, probably a very nice write-up about the play. But, and she said very nice things about Shauna. But she said that I had the better accent. And Shauna and I still needle her with that whenever
That's good.
I need to take her down a peg.
That's great.
Well, maybe you'll run a company again.
Cosmetic company?
Well, you guys did do it again. We took that, we were invited to take that production to Theatre New Brunswick, which is another weird intersection of the three of us, because Michael then became.
Yeah, well, that's actually the first time I ever heard your name was because Leslie was the production manager at the time.
That's right.
And she told me that this show was coming in and that Leyshon was directing it. That's the first time I heard your name.
Yeah. And that was very interesting, because I think Miles remembered that knock on the door and the Shauna energy of coming through, because that rehearsal, it was all, now let's talk about me. The first rehearsal, he was hoping that Shauna and I would find our way together and wasn't sure, and was trying to be Mr. Interlocutor until we both convinced each other that actually it was a good idea for us to work together, because it was kind of an arranged marriage. But the second time around, you were fierce. You wanted to, who's Frank and what does Frank want? And I loved that. It was clearly part of that experience you'd had.
And you did other shows together, right? You did Atlantis together, right? The three of you?
Yes,
Yeah.
actually.
That's
Glynis
right.
asked us back to do Atlantis,
And that was wonderful. That was a magical show for all of the personal and professional show. That was quite.
And that was Belfry or Playhouse? That was.
No, that one was the Belfry one, Maureen Hunter's play, set on the Greek islands, but the lost world of Atlantis, and quite mystical. Two monologues, never really intersecting in terms of the two characters, and quite magical. Yeah. It was great. Carol Clem did an amazing set. Carol Clem is now the theater artist, the amazing artist that brings sets to life at the Belfry, but she did a very special set for that, because it wasn't an obvious thing to bring that piece with its multi-levels to the small Belfry stage. So.
Yeah. And I remember it was over Christmas, because we came out and stayed there, and the Belfry doesn't pay a huge amount of money, but we got a room in the Empress.
We like to bring those bonuses in.
Shauna and I spent Christmas in the Empress, and that was our Christmas tree down in the lobby. And we were actually allowed to eat with the staff.
Are you serious? No.
Seriously. Yeah. It was part of the package. They gave whatever, like, if you worked at the Empress, you got to eat in like the restaurant, and then there was a rate if you were, a chamber maid. Do you still say maid? Sorry. Maintenance worker or whatever. And we got that perk. So we got to not only live in a small room in one of the very top towers, but we got to eat there and have our magic Christmas at the Empress.
Fantastic.
And do that great play.
Yeah.
And just to round my story off,
Yeah.
as we finished the last our last show, basically, I don't know whether I literally handed the keys to Glynis, but it was very much like that. Because when I talked to Patty and he said, you know, I said I had to go. I didn't have any juice left, and I said, you know, this is the person that you should take over the theater. And whether I left the key on the desk or gave it to her, I don't know, but it was literally a handover. And I think that was probably my final very good decision. Well, it was Patty's, I guess, but he just kind of did what I told him.
And Glynis, what was it like taking over at that point?
Well, Miles, once again, I think is gently underplaying, first of all, the horrors that he faced. But by the time I took over, it had stabilized. So it wasn't an opening the drawer to find Bill's kind of tension and experience, but it was very reduced. I mean, there was 3 of us, I think. We were going to do 3 shows, maybe 4. So and the Belfry at one time had been a much larger enterprise even in its early days. So I inherited a stabilized situation, but still a very reduced one, and a company that really did have this burden of an enormous deficit, and that did sort of everything was affected by that, and how many people, and you know, how many good small shows can we do and keep our audience alive. The great thing about the Belfry always was, though, right from the very beginning, Spring Ridge Cultural Center, that the Emmanuel Baptist Church becoming a theater space, was how much Victoria loved that space. They loved it, and they cared about it and were passionate about it. So that sustained us. So when you asked me about the crisis, and I'm going, well, I guess, I mean, every paycheck was a crisis. We never really knew in the first year, 2 years, whether Miles would speak, whether there was going to be a paycheck, or if we were going to be asked to, can you hold on, all 3 of us, can you hold on, wait till the box office comes in, or whatever. So there was that kind of tension, crises, but it was stable, and we had a building. We were known in the community, and had that support. So it wasn't building from ground zero.
Right.
So in a funny way for me, and then there's all kinds of crises in the arts almost daily. You know, that one, whether as we gradually grew again, what kind of structure would we have? Could we find the right people? Who did we want to unionize? Was a big moment in the history of the Belfry. What kind of work situation were we going to be able to do? But ironically, when my mind came to really rest, the biggest crisis was actually also of my time, my tenure at the Belfry. It was also the time of the most spectacular possibility. And so it was the time when we had always shared, that's all of you watching, I see some of the notes, and I can see that you're very much involved with the Belfry from days gone by. You'll know that we were always just in the church itself. The dressing rooms were tiny little rooms just off the, what
Right.
was the altar. There was no other room because a very important organization, community organization, Kool-Aid, took what was in earlier times a youth hostel, and gradually it became a place where homeless could find respite, could have a dormitory, could sleep. There was a dental clinic. We all know the early days of the Belfry and sharing all of the physical building itself with our landlord, Kool-Aid. An unusual partnership, but actually all things considered pretty good, until it got to the point where they realized they couldn't serve the community they needed to in the way they wanted to by remaining in Fernwood. And it was increasingly problematic for us to find room to exist. I mean, at one point there was at least 5 people in the Belfry.
No,
Yeah.
that's not possible.
And I'm not making, no.
I couldn't figure out how you had 3 up there.
Well, there's sort of like a TV tray situation and a long plank, and somebody would have to go out and somebody would go in. So, you know, we needed room, and yet we knew that we were the Belfry. We couldn't move downtown. We couldn't, or didn't want to establish a new theater. We needed this theater. And so finally the time came. And that was the time of crisis for us, because we were still very much a independent small company working hard to reduce a deficit. The idea of development officer, I mean, we didn't have a fundraiser. I mean, it just wasn't a world we understood or knew. And all of a sudden we were faced with the challenge of and the possibility of our own space, but we knew that we had to do something with that space. It couldn't just exist as a theater and then try and scale out somehow. So that was the big dilemma, and we were all extraordinarily lucky to have the community support. Patty Stewart, still there as leader of the board. My partner in all of this, all of the time, was Mary Dupre, who joined the Belfry as general manager within a year, 6 months of when I joined. So we kind of grew up together. I'd not been an artistic director. She certainly hadn't been a general manager. So we kind of learned together. And we learned to write grants and grant proposals. People like Howard Petch at the university, who was the president of the University of Victoria. I happen to know Linda Petch from the community work she did. And he took our little proposal for our $1 Million Baby campaign, which was our campaign to save the Belfry, or renovate the Belfry and complete the Belfry. He took it and he basically very nicely, very kindly put it in a garbage can. I mean, we were so ill-prepared. Getting an artistic director's report for the Canada Council about why the Belfry was important, that I could do. But going out into the corporate community, the foundations and capital campaigns, yay. I mean, we'd never had a building. Now all of a sudden it's a capital campaign. So it was a time of enormous stress. I mean, we laugh now because we know the happy ending, but we didn't know the happy ending. And every day we would go in and not know if we would meet the deadlines to be able to have our theater stay at the Belfry. We didn't know that. We knew that Kool-Aid needed to sell the building. They needed it for themselves. And
so I see. So all through the fundraising campaign, you
well,
don't know yet whether
yeah, until we got the initial, we can actually get the building, then what are we going to do with the building,
right,
and all of that. So it really was in so many ways and so much part of the Belfry history, serendipity, Children's Crusade, passion, smart people, the community coming together. But it was a crazy time, and we never actually knew it was all going to happen. Actually, you never know if it's all going to happen. And then we had little moments of angst where we're going, and I laugh now, well, what if we leave the Belfry office? Will we still be able to communicate as well? I mean, so then we did this configuration in the new space that sort of mirrored, but with more room, the Belfry. So you try and keep the soul of what you had and what made it so good.
I never realized that makes so much sense. The production office. That's what's now the production office.
Because this is well before everyone has internet and emails and all of that stuff. So we would know what was going on, Mary and I together, because I could hear her talking and she could hear me talking. And we didn't trust memos because we weren't very good at I was not very good at that kind of detailed communication. So we all just were more comfortable with the system as it worked.
Yeah.
So it was trying to keep as much alive. We knew, for example, for years, you might remember this, Mills, the Belfry associated with the smell of apple cider, because there was no lobby per se. There was just this little niche where people could get hot cider. And so the whole theater smelt of cider. And then there was big angst when we got the big lobby. Well, will it smell of cider? Will it still be the Belfry? So it was a lot of that kind of careful consideration of things people really valued about the experience of the Belfry, at the same time bringing the Belfry into a new decade and letting it much more significantly realize its artistic potential, knowing that we could do a show with more than 4 people and they would actually have dressing rooms and they could actually, commingle and it would be all right backstage. So it was that those were my kind of that's my memory of it. And I know always there's a lot of laughter, always a lot of tears, a lot of midnight rewriting of many grant proposals, going into offices and having people look at you like you grown horns as you kind of blurb on about the importance of the arts, and then learning to be more comfortable and learning that people will actually help you if you ask for help. And the company was able to ride without the help it really needed in terms of management and level of management. We were able to grab hold of that enormous opportunity. I was the lucky artistic director because I was the one that had that opportunity. I know that. It changed everything.
And the photos I've seen, those renovations, is so major.
Yeah,
I mean, the whole, putting in those steel beams under the balcony, it's so major. It's been terrifying.
It was terrifying, and it was also because we had no other spaces and we didn't want to not have a season. We had to try and make sure anything we were doing fit, work on the lobby, because we could still do the old lobby in the theater, but then in the summer, and then make sure that the new lobby was finished before people were going to use it in the fall. Literally, the classic having to dry paint with hair dryers, Mark and I, because I didn't like the color of something and he said, fine, paint it. And I did. And then of course it was wet. So I'm going, oh, I better dry this, because we can't afford the dry cleaning bill, all the patrons who are going to get paint on themselves. So many of those stories, but always because if you don't move forward, if you don't take chances, if you don't give yourself something that makes you afraid, you aren't going to. I think the fluidity of theater and its ability. Shakespeare went through a lot of pandemics and
fires and
fires and needed to survive. So I think that's one of the resilience of people in theater always, I think, astonishes me and gives me great solace at this time when you two men are facing such enormous challenges.
Thank you. That's great. That's great. I learned stuff I never knew. Thank you. So Ivan, do you want to talk a little bit about, well, we'll talk about our plans, like the good stuff, but do you want to talk a little bit about the challenges we've been facing?
The current ones?
The current ones.
There are other challenges too, but no, the current ones. I mean, you know, I think it's pretty obvious for everybody. I was in Toronto in March of 2019. Michael was here and we were starting the Spark Festival, and a pandemic hit the world. And so there was a fairly extensive conversation between Michael and I, me in Toronto and Michael here. And we made the determination to cancel the remainder of the Spark Festival and deal with the fallout of that. So we did, and we, you know,
and that was partly prompted by the fact that we had two other companies about to travel, including one coming from Newfoundland, and we were afraid they might get stranded here.
Yeah, we didn't want anybody to get stranded. The companies that were there, and certainly the companies who had yet to arrive, was a real risk for us and a risk for them, and didn't seem, you know, the people were still flying at that point, but it didn't seem like a wise thing to be undertaking. So we made the decision to cancel the rest of the Spark Festival, and there was, you know, disappointment there, and disappointment from the people who were attending the festival as well as the artists who were there. And we worked our way through that. You know, we paid our artists and we made sure that they were well taken care of, and kind of put patrons on hold who were very patient and waited to hear from us. And then a little while later, of course, we got into this situation where we were about to start the final show of the season, 1979.
Directed by Glynis, to be directed by Glynis.
To be directed by
That
Glynis.
Miles did the premiere of, I mean, Circles
Yes.
Within Circles.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And then so again, looking at the situations and polishing up crystal balls and checking the magic 8-ball, it was again decided that it was not wise to bring artists from across the country to complete that show. So we made the decision to cancel that. So, and again, the fallout was, you know, a potential great loss of revenue from having to refund subscribers as well as ticket buyers, the expenses that we incurred, payments that we made to artists, the designers and the actors, and ensured that people were taken care of. But you know, through the good graces of our patrons, most of whom turned their ticket dollars into donations, we came through that pretty well. I mean, you know, I think that both you and I, Michael, were the fortunate ones in coming into the organization. It was healthy financially. It was in, you know, a pretty good shape. The building certainly needed some significant work, but nothing urgent. There was some minor rebuilding that we were doing in terms of audience. Certainly when I arrived, but it was not it wasn't a crisis of those kinds of scopes. So it was actually pretty easy. And then the COVID thing has been not easy on anybody. It's been stressful for everybody, including all of the artists across the country. It was stressful for me having to deal with a lot of those decisions while being so far away. It was an odd place to be in Toronto while we were making really important and significant decisions about the company, and without really having the opportunity to think about what the longer term impacts of those decisions were going to be, just knowing that they were the right ones for the time. So it was an interesting time. And now we're at a point where we're kind of finding ways to re-engage. This is one of those ways, but you know, to re-engage. And Michael, I know you're going to talk a bit more about what we're actually doing, but you know, people can look forward to some play readings, and then later on they can actually look forward to some real plays, and we'll be announcing. We'll be sending out the renewal brochures to our subscribers soon. And it's a shorter season, obviously, and it's a very different season in that most of it will be live streamed. But we are going to do some real plays with actors on our stage, and hopefully a few bodies in the house. Not very many bodies, but a few bodies. Yeah. And we're looking forward to welcoming those back and once again rebuilding our audiences over time. We don't know how long this will be, but we're confident that it's the right thing to do to engage what will be for this season a fairly large company of actors. It's not a small season that's planned, so it's exciting times, and you know, honestly, without the support of the federal support programs, we'd be in a very, very different financial position, and we'd be in a very different position with our staff. But we've managed to keep all of the staff on, and we're going to manage to bring back the staff who normally are on layoff. We're going to manage to bring them back soon. So it's going to be a nice transition to some activity in the building that feels more creative than simply keeping the building well maintained.
Great. Again, someone else being extremely modest. Ivan, it was remarkable the way that he looked after the artists and our staff, and really went above and beyond. And it was definitely the right thing to do. And but we did it. Ivan did it better than most theaters. It was really beautifully handled.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yes. Well, we do have a season. We are actually going to be doing. We have well, with our fingers crossed, unless COVID, you know, sends everything up in smoke again. The idea is to open in March and have a 3-play season, running each production for 2 weeks, with the idea being that there'd be 50 people in the audience. We're assuming that may change, it may be more, and it may not be for all 3 of those shows. Something miraculous might happen, but assuming 50 people in the house, and then live streaming each performance. But it won't just, we'll have 2 cameras in the house, but the idea is that we will also have a camera person on stage who's kind of embedded into the staging on stage, so that you'll get different angles, and it won't just look like a poor version of you know, standing at the back of the theater watching. So I'm actually really excited about that, and I'm very excited about the shows that we will be announcing soon. The ironical thing is that I think it's the earliest we ever had, like the 2021 season before COVID hit, the plans that we had made, I think it's the earliest we ever had them made, and things were like nailed down, and it was all rock solid and terrific. And then one by one, for various reasons, as you know, as COVID started moving the time when we thought we would be able to perform, you know, first we were still thinking September, then we thought November, then we thought January, then February, anyway, now March. So of those shows, there's one show left from the original season, but the other two are I'm very excited about, and actually quite excited about the filming if that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, so this is the first of you say bi-weekly or?
Yeah, it's bi-weekly.
Bi-weekly Wednesday evening programming. So it's all up on our websites, but there's next 2 weeks from now, there's a play reading of a really interesting play called Two Rooms by Mansell Robinson. Then there's going to be a storytelling event. Then another play reading of Hannah Moskovich's East of Berlin. And on Remembrance Day, which falls on a Wednesday, we're doing a play reading of a play by Vern Thiessen called Bluebirds, which is a new play, hasn't yet been performed, about 3 nurses in World War I who wore those blue uniforms and were called Bluebirds. We're having an interview with, there'll be there's another Flame event in November. We're wrapping it all up. December the 23rd will be the last event, and that'll be a play reading of a reading version of Christmas Carol with our cast from 2017.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's not the same. I mean, sometimes you hear people saying, well, this is the future of theater, watching it on screen, and I don't believe it's the future of theater. Theater is about all of us coming together as a community and hearing stories told and ideas floated through the air from the stage to the audience, and that back and forth interaction between actors and audience, and that's what it will always be, and it'll be back soon. So unless anyone, Glynis or Miles or Ivan, if you have anything you want to throw in.
May I ask a question? I'm
Yeah, please.
Curious about history. So you and Ivan both started at the same time?
No, I started, Mary was here when I started, and we did, I think 3 seasons together. Yeah, and then Ivan came after what we call the season of death. After what we call the season of death, which was my bad programming season.
Tell me about it.
And together.
I think it was the disaster theme.
Pardon? Sorry, you froze.
The disaster theme.
It was a disaster. Yeah, it does fit into the disaster theme. It was 4 great plays that should never have been put together in the same season. Yeah. And so Ivan arrived just after that, and we climbed ourselves out of that little valley.
Yeah, it was an interesting start. There used to be 5,000 subscribers, and now we have 980 less.
Oh, shut up! It was not that. On that cheery note, and that cheery lie. Thank you, Glynis.
Thank you, and I'd like to do a special shout out when we were doing all of those memories to that core of volunteers, as well as the greater community, but the people that have been at the Belfry longer than any of us that have been there and do remember the cider because they served it. And so hats off to all the volunteers. It's very meaningful that so many of them are sending little notes on this device. It's so magical.
Thank you for that. Yeah, second that. And thank you, Miles. Great to see you.
Great to see you.
Yeah. Love to Shauna.
Wonderful. You bet. And anyway, yes, she said if I had a private moment with you and Glynis, this obviously isn't it, but to say hello to you from her.
Thank you.
Love Shauna.
Yeah.
Thanks. And thank you to everybody who joined us tonight. I'm thrilled that we got off to such a great start with so many people. So thank you, and hopefully, perfect. Hopefully, we'll see some of you back on 2 weeks from now, on Wednesday, October the 7th, for a reading of Two Rooms with Brian Markinson and Sarah Apple. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Keith, our technician.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And we will hopefully see you all in 2 weeks. And that is the end of tonight's session. Thank you, Glynis. Thank you, Miles. Thank you, Michael. And thank you to our between 50 and 53 participants.
That's amazing.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Is there a way, can we do all the chat things here? Is there a way to save those, Keith?
They will be saved. We'll have all of those.
I've
Oh,
got
great.
them, yeah.
We'll have a
Thank you.
record of those.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.